Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays, a podcast on musical encounters
Welcome to Rock and Roll
life.
Fridays, and I'm so happy to have another special guest, Michael Corsaro, joining Rock and Roll Fridays. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hey, how you guys doing over there?
Awesome. I'm so happy to have Michael on. His background is very unique. Has been playing music a long time and was telling me off the air kind of about his background and his experiences. So we're going to get right into it. Why don't you give all the listeners a little bit of background on yourself?
Sure. Well, as you said, I'm a full-time guitar player, performer. I've been playing music since I was about 10 years old. So pretty much my entire life, I'm not an old man yet. I've been playing for almost 40 years probably. I spent pretty much my entire life studying music, studying with some of the best guitar players, in the Philadelphia area, out in L.A. I've been blessed to play with some of the greatest musicians you can imagine. I learned from all these guys. I've always considered myself a student of music, and I still do. It's an infinite instrument, so I'm always thirsting for knowledge and to improve. So yeah, to answer your question, I've been a full-time musician. I have a career, but my music is also a massive part of my life.
Right. Yeah. And talk a little bit about the difference playing in LA and some of the people you played with band-wise in LA and then in the Philadelphia area. Because myself, I lived in the California, and the East Coast, West Coast musicians they're just different breeds, the East Coast, West Coast.
Well, I moved to LA in 1988, and I went back again around 1992. And the differences of those 6 years in LA was night and day. When I got there in June of 1988, it was a dream to be there. It was the hottest time, and I don't mean weather-wise. It was like a peak time on the Sunset Strip to be there, to play there, and to witness that era of just enthusiasm with the 80s rock and roll. And then when I was there for a while, I came home and I went back in 92, and it was the complete opposite. That's when the whole grunge era came in, and the Sunset Strip, it was like tumbleweeds blowing down the street. It was like a barren waste. What the hell happened 6 years ago? This place was like the place to be. So there was a difference. And I've been back to LA many times since. I go to the NAMM show every year, which is just a phenomenal time. But LA is a different animal than what it was when I was there in the 80s and 90s. The difference is that I saw in the 80s was obviously a lot of hair bands, glam rock, and you had some substance in a lot of bands, and you had some hokey pokiness that I thought, in my opinion, kind of ruined the era, especially towards the end of the age when it got really, really watered down and the substance was gone. But there were some phenomenal, amazing musicians out there. And in Philadelphia, I was very, very fortunate because, I was like 16 years old, and I was sneaking to the club scene in Philadelphia. And around 81, 82, it was very, the beginning, if you will, of what was to come in the 80s. And we had an incredible hard rock scene of just so many talented bands and musicians in Philadelphia. The only reason why I went to LA was because, you heard all the rumors, LA, California. So I gave my shot out there. But I got to tell you, sneaking back in those days, it was called the Galaxy. That was the number one, club in South Jersey. And I would sneak in there at 16. I was playing there at 17, opening for bands like Cinderella, Brittany Fox, Heaven's Edge, Tangier, Dead End Kids. The Dead End Kids, in my opinion, were one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time. And you saw so many bands, and not only in the East Coast, but in the West Coast, copy those guys, from guitar flips, the hair, the clothing, the stage
Right.
show, the production, the songwriting, you know. And I remember going to the Galaxy on every single Friday night. You'd see, you know, Tangier or Brittany Fox. You see White Fox, and Saturday night you would go back. You'd see Cinderella. You'd see Heaven's Edge. You'd see Brittany Fox, and all those bands. Majority of them got record deals, and Cinderella did the best. But you know, to witness those guys, you know, 5 feet in front of you every single week, and watch these guys develop and get record deals,
Yeah.
and become, you know, become international successes. It was a really special time, you know.
Yeah.
And those were our mentors. That's how we got educated on that stuff. And in LA, it was just larger.
Yeah. What were some of the bands in LA like?
Well, the time Warrant was breaking. Guns N' Roses broke a couple of years prior. It was Warrant, Faster Pussycat, LA Guns, all those guys. But I like the little bit earlier era. You know, I know. You know, Motley was up already. Van Halen was up for 10 years already. But you know, but then it was like Warrant, it was LA Guns, Faster Pussy, a band called Tough. You know, and that's when I saw the watering down kind of thing happening, you know, where the substance was more glammy, less substance. But nonetheless, it was just a very special time to be out there. And I was blessed to see it on both coasts, East Coast and West Coast.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, were you playing in bands that were opening for some of these bands? Like you talked about being 5 feet away. I mean, did you get to see Guns and?
No, Guns N' Roses. They were already up already. They had already broke when I was out there. Again, I think I got there a little bit late, but nonetheless, it was still an incredible experience. But yeah, I was playing the Whiskey, the Roxy. At the time, it was a club called Gazzaris. You know, and what was great about it was, you know, if anybody wasn't on tour, you know, they'd be in the clubs. You know, they'd be in the Whiskey, they'd be at Gazzaris, they'd be in the Rainbow. I mean, the real famous Rainbow. You walk in the Rainbow, I would walk in and see every single one of my heroes just sitting down with a pack of people having dinner or drinks. And obviously, you didn't want to come off like a fan or anything, but you didn't bother them. You know, those like an unwritten thing. Just don't break their stones, you know, just don't bother them, you know?
Yeah.
And I never did. I never got into that. But, you know, it was just a glorious time to witness all my childhood heroes, you know? And many of them I've met, many of them were super cool, some weren't, but, you know, but in Jersey and Philly, I didn't get that rock star type of thing, you know? Everybody was approachable in Philly. And in LA, it was kind of the mixed bag of nuts, you know.
Yeah.
I remember, you know, going to the Galaxy in the afternoon during the weekend. Cinderella would be practicing upstairs, and Tommy would walk downstairs, the coolest guy in the world, Eric, and they would talk. You know, they were just cool guys. They weren't egos, you know.
Yeah.
LA slightly different.
Yeah.
You know,
slightly different. You know, you know, for people that want to check out Michael's playing, it's michaelcorsaro.com, and I'll post a link. But even your style, like I was looking at some of your videos, like I can tell your influences, you know what I mean? Like it is like that kind of hardcore, the way you hold the guitar too is very high up on the neck. Like talk a little bit about your playing style.
Well, my playing, you know, my true love of music is instrumental rock music, you know, and I always use the comparison. And by no way, shape, or form am I comparing myself to a Joe Satriani or a Steve Vai, but they are my influences, you know. So when people say I'm not comparing myself, but those are the guys that really influenced me musically. And to elaborate even beyond those guys, I'm a huge fan of like Paul Gilbert, Guthrie Govan. There's just so many incredible, more today than I've ever seen, and they're younger and younger and younger, you know. And you know that's my roots. Of studying music, you know. I'm a student of the game, and I watch these guys. I've met them all many times. I've been highly influenced over you know, probably 20, 25, 30 years. However, that being said, you know, I study jazz, I study classical. You know, I play flamenco and Spanish guitar. You know, I'm a full-time musician in Atlantic City, so I play so many different styles of music. Whatever the gig requires, you got to be able to cut the gig.
Yeah.
You got to be able to read music. You got to be able to play any big band, rock, jazz, fusion, whatever the hell it may be.
Right.
So that's what keeps me working.
Yeah.
I play a lot of different styles. However, if I'm able to do what I do, you go to my website, michaelcorsaro.com. Shameless plug right there, but there's a couple of videos there. That's my personal true love of guitar, and that's what I've been highly influenced by. And that's why I said, there's just what I've noticed about guitar now versus when I was coming up. We didn't have YouTube. Big difference, huge. My son is 17 years old and playing for a little while. He is years ahead of where I was at 17 years old. And
because of the education aspect, because of the music you can listen to. Yeah, absolutely.
It's at his fingertips. And back, I'm dating myself. If I wanted to see someone play, one of my greatest guitar heroes of all time is a guy named Reggie Wu. Reggie has and always will be the iconic guitar player in my eyes. I used to go see him play whenever I could. Lessons from him. He was a guitar player for Heaven's Edge. But the comparison today is kids don't leave their house. They pop off their phone or iPad or YouTube and they put on, hey, I want to learn this Van Halen lick or this whatever lick, and boom, it's right there. Well, I would literally have to get a ride to Galaxy or to watch and sit down and watch my guitar hero play and try to turn my brain into a video camera. And I would rush home and say, how the hell did he do that?
Right. Yeah.
And nowadays, the kids have it right here on their phones.
Right. Yeah. The days of listening by ear and trying to figure it out are less, because you can hear it 20 times, 20 different ways live on YouTube. The album cut, the mixed cut, absolutely. Let me ask you, like I ask everyone, obviously music's a giant part of your life. Like, what is it about music, right? Like, there's people I talk about all the time. There's people that listen to music, then there's people that love music, and then there's people where their life revolves around me. I mean, I'm one of them, obviously. I can't get enough of it. I love shows. I love people talk. Like, what is it about music that motivates you creativity wise, excitement wise, and to do what you do?
It's a hard question to answer. It's something that is just for me. I can't speak for other people, but I know many guitar players, and when you get that passion, it's a drug. It's an addiction, and when I started, it became a massive addiction for me, And I'll tell you, I think in many ways it saved me because I never did drugs in my life. I never smoked, never drank. My high was playing guitar. And learning and studying. For me, I'm also a tone junkie. I mean, I'm if for those that don't know what that means, in the 80s, guitar players were just searching for the, as we used to call, the brown sound. The Eddie Van Halen brown sound, we refer to it, and it was like the infamous sound that nobody could get. And we would always search. So I see players today who are younger who have no tone, and I'm not being judgmental, but I grew up in an era where tone was like the forefront. So playing guitar is a massive passion. It's not, I always say, it's not something that I do, it's something that I am, and you just can't walk away from that, And I've had moments in my career where I just had to put it down. I was doing 100, I was doing 150 dates a year, and I was burned out. And I need to walk away. And then it calls you back, it calls you back. And then you just keep, right now, I mean, perfect example, I'm studying jazz right now. I mean, it's like, so it's like, it's a bottomless pit of learning,
That's awesome.
That's what drives me too. Is that I just want to keep learning, and you never stop.
Right.
And again, and then the other side of that, it's important. Playing is one thing, but chasing tone. I love equipment. I love gear. I love buying new guitars and searching. So it's I don't say it's a hobby, but there is some hobby aspects to it, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
But
Awesome.
It never goes away. It never goes away.
So, well, I mean, one of the premise of my show, right, is the common man meeting their band, and I talk to everyone, right? It's everyone's got a story, and I love talking to musicians and people like yourself because, unlike fans, right, where I'm a fan, like I'm not really I have never been in bands, I've never had the creative capability of a lot of musicians that I talk to. You had the opportunity, as you already mentioned, to be up close with people, but yeah, have you ever had a run-in where you're like, oh wow, I can't believe I'm in this situation talking to this person?
Oh,
like, can you tell a story, one about that?
yeah, many times. I'll give you a perfect example. Last year I was in LA. I went to what was it called? It was called I think the Heavy Metal Awards, something like that, in LA. It's kind of cheesy, you know. And Satriani was there, Steve Vai was there, sitting at the table behind me having dinner. I didn't realize they were closing. It was at the Hilton Hotel in Anaheim, and we went in there, me and my good friend, and we, like $30 we went in, and we're sitting down, and Satch is right behind us, Vi's right behind us. Alice Cooper's band was there. A lot of great players were there. And I come to find out they were the closing act. And there's probably only about 200 people in place. It was a very small little banquet-sized room. And they did this every single year. Both Vi and Satch got the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame award in it was last year, 2020. And they're like right behind me having dinner and eating. I'm like, oh my God, I want to talk to these guys so bad, pick their brain. But you don't do that. You just don't do that. You just lay low. You just talk to them. But at that particular event, it was like I met Don Dokken. I met Jeff Tate from Queensryche, Anita Strauss from Alice Cooper, Stephen Pearcy from Rat. It was like everybody was at this event, and it was a very, very small.
Yeah.
Maybe 200.
It felt like a wedding almost.
Exactly. Yeah. And they were just wandering. But again, I never wanted to be the, oh my God, I never was that, or kind of autograph. I never did that. And of course you want to pick their brain, but you just don't. You just respect their. And I tell you, they respect you a lot more by treating them like a normal person.
Absolutely. I say it all the time. They also know, I feel like some of these artists, they know their job too. They know that at least in my experiences, they know you're a fan. They know you're psyched to see them. That's part of their job, right? They make money based on people like us, right? Yeah. Supporting their music, supporting their creativity. And, it must be a grind, right? I mean, I go get a cup of coffee. If someone says hello to me, I'm shocked, right? I can't imagine being.
And that's what I said. Whatever you say, they've heard it 9 million times already.
Right.
So I'm not going to repeat that. I have some stories where I have had conversations with them, and I always try to find myself where I'm like, man, don't come off that way. Don't be like this. Just be, hey man, love your playing, or something generic. You know. And they're like, yeah, man, thanks. But I've been very, very fortunate in my career to meet countless musicians, famous, not famous. And I'll tell you a story I tell everybody. At the time, in the early 80s, it was Eddie Van Halen, it was Randy Rhoads. They were on the majors, the national, international circuit. Everyone was learning Van Halen and Randy Rhoads licks. And I always tell people this story, and some get it, some don't. There were two guitar players in the Philadelphia area, a guy named Mike Stanley, and again, Reggie Wu. Both these guys were at that level, and still are. And I would go and watch Mike, I would go and watch Reggie, and I was just like, I'm never going to be that. I'm never going to be that good, And so I always say, on the national scale, we were getting an education from Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads, but on a local scale, I was blessed to have guys that were, no question about it, of equal talent for those guys.
Right.
On a local level. And these guys were, Mike went to Berkeley. He was I can't even describe his playing, his tone, his feel. And I watch him play today, and he's got the same tone and feel. He's phenomenal, you know.
Yeah.
And I learned from these guys.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed to say. I'm not ashamed to say that. These guys, I would go and watch. I would go home pissed off, like, what the? I'm never going to be there. I'm never going to. So those guys inspired me. They still inspire me, you know.
It's awesome.
So music is a great thing. It's a drug. It's an addiction. It's a never-ending. You can't fill the cup up ever. It doesn't happen. You know? So I consider myself one of the most luckiest people to have it locally and both East Coast, West Coast, and I got both educations.
That's awesome.
Very, very fortunate.
Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure. And I mean, just to hear you talk about your experiences on both coasts.
Yeah.
And I urge everyone to check out michaelcorsaro.com because the work is pretty awesome. I love the guitar work. And again, I appreciate you joining us.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Mike.